Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire. Welcome back to Pagan Tales. Today, we are getting to know the Dagda, one of the very important deities of the Celtic pantheon. Another one of his names is Oecnid Althair, or the All-Father, as it is sometimes translated. And to reinforce this particular position, he was known as the chief of the Tuatha De Dan, and that whole family of gods. His father was called Eletha. His mother was Etheniu. He was married to the Morrigan, at least by most accounts, and his mistresses included Boann Ingdech, who was also the daughter of Ingdech, as well as many others. His sons we hear about the most frequently are Bod Durg, Angus, Medir, Kermate, and Aed, and his daughters we know the best are the goddess Brigid and Anye. So that gives you a general overview of who and what he is. And I think that the picture that I found of him on Pinterest, which is also available on Etsy if you would like to get it for yourself, I think that really encapsulates who and what he is in a nutshell. You see the hammer or the club that is obviously would be good for both working and for defense. You see that big cauldron on his back, and his expression is just one of joviality, very good humor, good tempered, larger than life kind of deity. So let's get to know him a lot better. So, what exactly is the Dagda the god of? To begin with, life and death, agriculture, the ordering of the seasons, and making sure that things are coming in the proper order, in the proper time, in the proper way, fertility of every single variety, but also magic and druidry. So, we can see why he gained prominence the way that he did, because he had charge of so many aspects of life. His sacred objects that we often see him pictured with are the cauldron of plenty, the club of life and death, and a harp that could influence both human beings and the seasons themselves. That was how he would order things. It was through the music of this harp. Now, his residence was called Brnu na Boyne, which translates as a mansion or a palace of the Boyne, sometimes also called Boyne Valleys of the Tombs, a real location located in County Meath in Ireland, and it is open to the public. So if you would like to see essentially the landscape that gave rise to this myth, you can absolutely do that if you can get yourself over to Ireland. Now, in myth, his home was known for having fruit trees that were very heavy with fruit just all the time, always ready for harvesting, and two pigs, one for slaughter and roasting and the other to grow. So he always had that coming and going of all of the necessary components with which to sustain life. Now, his titles, and I want to spend a little bit time on his titles just because I think they are very revealing, and it helps shape both the way that people in the past have viewed this deity and also how we might come to think of him. I don't always linger on this sort of thing, but in his case, it felt significant. And if you heard the sound of 1,000 stampeding wildebeest, that was the kittens. It's time to play the running game. Forgive them, they know not what they do, and they interrupt. So back to the actual video. The Dagda, that translates essentially as the good or the great god. This is derived from Dago Diwos, which means shining divinity, which also morphed into Dago Diwos, Dagos meaning shining, which could be as in the time of day, or it could be shining as in good, as in skilled. People did go out of their way to say, being called good doesn't mean a, reflection on his character, and he was an automatically good guy all the time in this, and blah, 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 blah. However, I think when people go out of their way to mention that, for one, they're spending a little bit too much time judging deities as opposed to trying to learn from them. And for two, I think they are missing the point that being greatly skilled in particular ways is a virtue in and of itself. One does not have to be a model of perfection, not that perfection exists, not in the human realm and not in the divine realm. yonder ways, that deity must be the personification of perfection. That is their own premise that they operate off of, and I do think it's a faulty one. But for us, goodness and skill and virtue, these things go very much hand in hand. Are you able to do the thing you are doing? Are you able to conduct yourself honorably? It's not about judging your character by the sum of your faults or your sins. It's about judging your character of, what are you producing and creating in this world. Now, the Oeknid Alathair, again, that means either horseman or allfather. This translation does lead some people to conflate the Dagda with Odin. And other sources say that, oh, well, that you might think that at the beginning, but really he has more in common with Thor and this and that. And whereas I'm more of a hard polytheist, and I'm saying, no, it just means that for the Celtics, deities and peoples, that the Dagda served more of that function of being the one who presides over all, even if he's not necessarily their, direct progenitor. Oh, there's a cat behind me. All sorts of cat content today. This video should do well. The next title I want to look at is Furben, which means the horned man. Now, in Wicca, the idea of the horned god is very much present. And generally, when we think of the horned god, we are thinking specifically of Karnonos. However, that is not the only deity that was known for having horns or antlers atop his head from time to time. The Dagda also falls into that category. So we see we're working with a much larger idea here. And then we had Ruad Rofhessa, Lord of Great Knowledge. Now, this is very interesting because the Dagda, I think, in fairness, could be described as a very earthy kind of deity, and we don't always associate those from that kind of background as being particularly well educated. So it shows that the one does not have to exclude the other, and I think that's also an opportunity for us to reflect upon some of the class distinctions and where people draw the lines and what they think constitutes being educated actually means. I think we've become a little bit too enamored with pieces of paper that say that people are educated, but who know nothing, understand nothing, have no marketable skills of any kind. I think we do need to let go of this very twisted understanding of education. Of what that's come to mean in modern society. I think it requires reform. And looking at our deities, it's the example about who was considered to be a repository of knowledge, who was considered to be a repository of wisdom. I think that will help us shape our own reforms within our own families. Because even if you do send your children off to a traditional school, if you're a parent, you are still absolutely in charge of their education and what your children need to be taught. So don't sell yourself short. That's all. Next title is Dare, the fertile one, which, of course, everything about the dog days relates back to the idea of fertility. Without fertility, life cannot be sustained. So there really is nothing more important than that. And then the last title that I want to bring up is I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but I've probably butchered the others, so why stop now? Is Circe, meaning striker. And of course, with him carrying around that big old club, it's obvious why he would be known as a striker, because that is literally what he does. So his appearance, which we briefly touched upon on the slide that had, a depiction of him, he was considered to be a giant both in height and in breadth, just very large all around. He was generally considered to be good looking, if not perhaps the most polished of presentations. He was known for his long beard, often, kind of wild and tangled, which makes sense because the Dagda is, in essence, he is a worker bee. He's busy doing things. You're not always going to have a perfectly coiffed hairdo and beard when you're actually out accomplishing things. He tends to wear a long hooded cloak. His clothes are often a bit ill-fitting, perhaps exposing a bit more than what would be considered proper. But I think that's just showing the excellence of his abundance. His ability to provide is so great that that he can't keep himself in trousers properly. So when you consider that in the context of earlier days of human development, where the ability just to make a living and be able to live off the land was a much more risky business. There was no guarantees. There are 1,000 things that could go wrong. And if they go wrong, there really wasn't anything to fall back upon. So the idea of a God that, was always providing abundantly, that is one of the many reasons why he would have been so worthy of attention and worship, because people knew what poverty was. They understood what starvation and going without was. So, they would definitely want to have this God affecting their affairs as much as possible. He always, well, often carried his bottomless cauldron that could cook up a feast on demand. This is very interesting because that isn't the only time in Celtic mythology where you have an object that is without a bottom. The other thing that comes to mind is the bag that Rhiannon, you know, formed to get caught in, and um, and to not be able to find the bottom of, just something that was without end. And of course, in modern fiction, we saw this repeated a little bit with the J.K. Rowling stories, with the tent that was bigger on the inside than the outside. Hermione's bag, when they were having to go wandering looking for various objects to defeat. He who shall not be named. And then, even in science fiction, the idea of Doctor Who with his time capsule, the TARDIS that could fly through time and space, that was also bigger on the inside. You can see how this thought has still persisted even into our modern storytelling. So it's not surprising that that it would originate from the ancient mythology of the land of that those stories sprang from. Also, his club, or sometimes it's called his staff, it could kill up to 9 men in one swipe, but it could also revive the dead with a touch. That is how he is a lord of both life and death, because he can giveth and he can taketh away, as our Christian cousins might put it. And he also carries an ornate harp of carved oak. The type of wood was very specific, which puts all things in their right place. And the other thing with oak is that oak is very considered to be extraordinarily important within Druidry, with whom the Dagda also has a link. And the oak also is known for um, its branch structure. Above the ground is mirrored by its root structure below the ground. That's why you will often find the oak being used as a symbol of the tree of life, something that is equal measures up and down, composing the whole. Reference for the seen and the unseen in life. So, if you're going to make offerings to the Dagda, if you decide to work with him, you might do oak bannocks, which is just a kind of pancake. You can find recipes online. You might make him porridge or oatmeal. You could offer him buttered bread. I found that most deities respond very well to buttered bread, particularly if you baked that bread yourself. And if you are nervous about baking bread, I promise it's not as difficult as what you might imagine. You can email me at brigantiablackbird at protonmail.com if you need to. I can talk you through the process. I can give you a very simple recipe that gives me very good, consistent results. You can do this, so don't be afraid. Also, because he's known for his fruit tree, offering him fruits of any kind. If you have exotic fruits that might not have been known in the Celtic world, I think it would be a very nice treat to offer to the Dagda. Pork products, which again is a reference to his two pigs, one for eating and one for growing. And then ale, copious amounts of ale, probably alcohol generally, but I would think ales and beers and things of that sort would be the best well received. I don't know about offering the Dagda wine. I doubt he would turn it down, but he just seems more of a beer drinker to me. But that's just me. You can make an offering of music, playing music, especially if you know how to play the harp or if you are learning song. The tradition of singing while playing the harp is very strong within Druidry. It is the essence of being a bard. So, as he has links with that, that would be a good way to offer to him and to connect with him in general. And then I also thought maybe assembling a bundle of twigs from the trees that correspond to the Dagda and then burning them in a fire could be an offering to him, or a way of seeking him out, trying to get his attention, asking for aid. And those trees, in case you are curious, include the ash, aspen, birch, blackthorn, elder, hawthorn, holly, oak, rowan, and yew, which these trees would have been well known in the Celtic world. In your studies, you've probably come across a lot of different lore surrounding these trees, just in general. And you've seen certain ones that have very well-known um, mythological associations with them. Now, why are we talking about the Dagda right now? We are in springtime, or at least I hope it feels like springtime where you're at. So what is he up to? Well, obviously he's playing a prominent role in the restoration of the fertility of the land. And if you live in a more agricultural area like I do, I mean, call upon the Dagda, call upon all of the gods that have something to do with fertility. Set yourself up for success, lend some good luck to your neighbors. This is something that you can do that can have a visible, literal benefit to yourself and everyone around you. And then also, you've got to keep in mind that in legend, the Dagda is known for performing the great rite with the Morgan during Samhain. And now, by the time that is rolling around, there's now fruit being born from that particular union. His presence can also be felt in the lengthening hours of the sunlight, a general lightening of the spirits now that winter has mostly passed. Now, obviously, I'm wearing flannel long sleeves today of the recording because it is a little bit chilly, but still, the worst is over. And so, by knowing that the worst is over, we know that he's beginning to be a lot more active in the world again. Now, his harp calls back the warmth, it calls back the nourishing rains and the optimism to create more life, the optimism to create in general. Anytime you create something, whether you are having a baby or you are writing a book or you've created a painting or whatever it is, that you create, it's saying, I want something beautiful brought into the world. I'm saying this world is good enough to bring something good into. It does require optimism. It requires acknowledging the reality of beauty and goodness and virtue still exists, no matter whether or not its opposite number seems to be having sway. It's also an act of courage to do these things. Now, his club at this time of year, and remember, it has the ability to bring back to life, and it is touching the land and bringing that back to life. And it's also bringing us back to life because we're being shaken out of our doldrums. We're being shaken out of the sleep of winter. It's time to rejoin the world. And of course, his cauldron is bringing forth enough to sustain us through the year. And to go along with that, we could do worse than also make arrangements so that we are gardening as much as we have space for, as much as we have knowledge and can afford to do. Just grow things, make things, play your part. And that is essentially what I have for you on the Dagda today. I hope you decide to investigate him a little bit further. I hope this has given you some ideas on how to work with him and, of course, why to work with him. And I would love to hear about any impressions that you have, any experiences that you have with working with Dagda in the comments below. Or again, you can email me at brigantiablackbird@protonmail.com and you can tell me all about it there if you're feeling a little bit shy about speaking in public, which, I get. But next week in Pagan Tales, we will be talking about the goddess Astara. I will probably even touch upon, the fidgety question of, well, was she really a goddess or not, and this and that. So we'll touch on that, probably not at length, but we'll get into it there. So definitely come back. In the meantime, leave your thoughts for me in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.